everyone, and welcome to another episode of DNA Productions. This week, we have decided that we're going to move our Christopher Nolan retrospective to video format.
Yep.
So we're going to start here with Batman Begins. If you want to hear our first three Christopher Nolan reviews, I'm sorry, you'll have to go to DNA Film Wars and listen to it in audio format.
Yeah, those episodes are going to be Memento, or starting with Following, then Memento, followed by Insomnia, and now we're here. We're going to start the Dark Knight trilogy, so...
I think it's a great place to start
Yeah.
for our video format. But anyway, so yeah, we're here with Batman Begins, and who was involved in the making of this film.
All right, so obviously, this is going to be directed by Christopher Nolan, written by Christopher Nolan and David S. Goyer, who, writes... all DC movies?
Or he used to. Maybe
used
not
to.
so much anymore.
Starring Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Liam Neeson, Katie Holmes, Gary Oldman, Cillian Murphy, and I'm going to say Morgan Freeman because I love Morgan Freeman. So.
Okay.
And there's some more people in there, but, you know.
And of course, you can't forget the score by Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard.
Yeah.
So, lots of really talented people. This
Absolutely.
is an A-list cast with an A-list crew. I mean, pretty much any film lover's dream.
Yep.
Coming together to make this movie. And so basically the plot of this movie, we see how Batman is created.
Essentially.
And his battle with Ra's al Ghul to save Gotham.
And kind of Scarecrow.
Scarecrow's a bit player in the movie as well, yes.
Kind of. definitely features, it really focuses on Ra's al Ghul, though, so, which is pretty cool.
Well, we'll talk about that.
Really. He is the main villain, I guess.
He is the main villain, yes. I mean, yeah, I'll give you that. But, let's just get right into our review here. The movie starts out with Bruce Wayne. I can't think of his name for a second. Bruce Wayne, he is in Asia.
Yep.
We are to understand he's been in Asia for some years. He's in an Asian prison, and some Tibetan prison, I'm assuming.
I think that's what it says. It says something about, Tibet or...
and he is fighting with the other inmates, and he is found by Liam Neeson,
who presents himself as a man named Ducad.
And Liam Neeson tells him that if he picks a blue flower and makes it to
Carries
the top
up
of
the
the
mountain,
mountain, that he will be trained as a member of the League of Shadows, which is the kind of looming evil organization over this film.
Yeah.
First thing I noticed about this movie, we always talk, or in our previous reviews, we talked a lot about Nolan's penchant for non-linear storytelling.
Yeah, it wasn't featured as heavily in the previous film that we watched, Insomnia, but it's definitely featured more prominently in this movie, back to kind of his roots.
Well, I was going to say, actually, that this movie is told more or less in linear fashion.
Just cut.
They do intercut scenes from his childhood and this League of Shadows thing. They do sneak one scene that happens towards the end of the first act and earlier, just kind of as like a hint of what's going to happen. But after that, especially once we get to the second act, this movie is more or less told linearly, which I think for a movie meant for mass consumption, a Batman movie, I think, was the right move.
Yeah, I'd say definitely the first act is where it is non-linear, kind of in classic Nolan fashion. Mm-hmm. But after that, it definitely becomes a pretty linear movie. So
yeah, but this first act, I wrote down in my notes that we kind of, in my opinion, we kind of speed through this League of Shadows training bit. We talked when we were talking about 2001. I talked about how, for most filmmakers, would take the story of that third act in that film and would make it the whole movie.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of filmmakers would have taken the story that Nolan presents in this first act of Bruce Wayne going to Asia, and I mean, really, we just see a brief montage of this, but apparently he went in and he got in with the crime lords in Asia and was helping stealing from Wayne Enterprises or whatever, to learn how they functioned. And then he got put in prison, and then he went and he found, or the League of Shadows found him, and then he spent we see in some montages him training with Liam Neeson to be a member of the League of Shadows, and all this happens in a span of about, I don't know, the first 30-40 minutes of the movie. I think they could have easily made this the whole movie, though.
Yeah, it would have been cool to. It definitely would have been cool. I mean, granted, whatever we say about this movie, I love this movie. So, it would have been cool as much as I like this movie. I think it would still be cool even now to see, a movie about this scenario. Like really talk. This movie is talked about as an origin story for Batman, a true origin story, like how he gained the knowledge to train to become the person that he is, and in the final moments we see him don the cape and cowl and become Batman, which would be a really interesting movie to see. And then we delve into the Dark Knight or whatever.
Yeah, which I think, and maybe this was pushed by the studio. Probably, I mean, I would think Nolan probably had pretty much creative control of this. I just think he didn't think that would leave enough Batman. I think they thought the writers of this movie.
I think when they were, I think Nolan probably had a lot of creative control over this movie, but in the long run, I think Nolan realized what this movie was being made for, and it was being made for a very broad audience. If Nolan would have had complete 100% total creative control and could have done this with just his production company and Warner Brothers not backing him, I think that he might have taken a chance and done something like that. But he knew this was being marketed to a mass audience and that it needed to be a Batman movie and not this build up for 2 hours. So because this is a fairly long movie. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes. It's long,
140 minutes. And when Warner Brothers gives you 150 mil, you better make
a
good return on investment. But anyway, so all this happens. We have Ken Watanabe, who is a great actor, but really is barely in this movie. He's the
quote-unquote Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah, he's the fake Ra's al Ghul. I'm not sure I still really understand Liam Neeson's reasoning for hiding his real identity from Bruce Wayne. I mean, it's not like a major hang-up for me.
No.
It's kind of a big ruse, though, they go through to fake Ken Watanabe being the actual Ra's al Ghul and all this. But anyway, but they ask Bruce Wayne to kill a farmer who is allegedly a murderer, and that's where he decides he doesn't want to be a member of the League of Shadows. So he, burns down their castle or their little palace or whatever. And
might I say that it's a very nice set design that they've created here. I mean, I assume they probably filmed it on. I don't know if they filmed this in Tibet or whatever, but it's a pretty scenery around it. I mean, big snowy mountain with this large Asian looking building on top. I like it a lot. I think the set design for it's pretty cool looking.
Oh yeah, the set design. This whole movie is filmed. The set design and the cinematography, everything like that is very beautiful. Yeah. Very well done. As most.
I think this is where, to me, the cinematography and the style in this movie is really where Christopher Nolan became Christopher Nolan as we know him today, and he. The way he frames certain especially cityscapes, like when he's painting over cityscapes and the way that looks and the color palette and everything of things like that, definitely where he found his niche and style. So
yeah, obviously, I mean, this movie looks beautiful, as like I said, most Christopher Nolan movies do. But while we're still here in this first act, I do want to talk about some of these flashback scenes. I think Michael Caine looks the same age in all the flashback scenes and the present scenes. Gary Oldman, they try to make look like he's aged, but freaking Christian Bale, to give us the impression he's a college age student, they gave him this boyish haircut.
Which I get the impression he's not supposed to be a young college student. I get the impression he's supposed to be, probably around a senior in college or so, considering the fact that Rachel is in law school and an intern for the DA. I get the impression that he's probably around a senior in high school, if not already graduated and also in a graduate program or something like that. So he's probably around. His character's probably supposed to be around 23-ish, 24 maybe at the oldest, pushing it. And he was about 30 at the time of filming. So
okay, well, I just thought it was kind of funny.
I mean, granted, his haircut, he definitely does not look like a college student. The haircut is kind of funny to see him. Yeah. They just cut it and swoop some bangs down in front of his forehead, and you're like, okay, that makes you look younger.
I did make a note that when they in the youngest scenes when they're flashing back to when he was a boy and all this and his parents are killed and I didn't think that the boy the actor playing the really young Bruce Wayne was that great of an
I
actor.
don't, I don't. I've never really cared for him. I think he kind of
He undersells pretty much everything.
undersells his emotion. Yeah.
But I mean, other than that, I mean, I think the nonlinear stuff is handled pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's definitely not done to like the degree of Following or Memento or something like that. So that's good.
Yeah, which is definitely good. I didn't want to have to like wrap my brain around that tonight. But anyway, so he burns down this League of Shadows hideout, and he saves Liam Neeson's character, who he does not know at this point is the actual Ra's al Ghul, and he just kind of leaves him with the villagers. So then we get into the second act of this movie, in which he goes back to Gotham with a mission that he's going to liberate it of crime. I guess. And of course, the board of his company has had him declared legally dead, so they're going to take they're going to take the company public, virtually taking it out of his hands.
Yep.
And then the second act, we really build on the
really is kind of
love story between him and
then a lot of setup for this fear toxin that Scarecrow will be using in the third act, or that the League of Shadows uses in the third act, and focusing on that and stuff like that. And Bruce, meeting with Lucius and Morgan Freeman's character, Lucius Fox, and gaining equipment and making a suit and all that stuff, and trying to get together this crew basically of people he knows who are good in the city that will help him along the way. So
yeah, and there's a big plot surrounding one of the mob leaders.
Yeah.
And Rachel trying to take him down as one of the DAs.
Yeah, Carmine Falcone.
And so we spend a lot of time with that, which really he's in here so that we can have the big Batman introduction scene.
Yep.
Which comes about an hour into the movie, where Batman he's gotten his suit. I like the evolution of Batman. So he gets trained by the League of Shadows,
yep.
And then we have this scene. Well, he goes to his company and he meets with Lucius Fox, who is the head of the
Applied Sciences
Division. And I think for the most part, Christopher Nolan, David S. Goyer, they bring him on because he knows comics inside and out. So his job is to, I guess, probably write. He is the story credit, so he writes out the basic plot of the movie and he brings in all of his knowledge. And then Christopher Nolan comes in, I figure, and
embellishes it and actually writes the dialogue.
And he writes the dialogue. He makes it make sense. He always is asking why. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? I think that Christopher Nolan and Goyer together do a really good job, for the most part, of making a plausible origin story for a man who dresses up as a bat and beats up criminals.
Now granted, it's not something that would ever happen, but I think that they've definitely done a good job creating what could be perceived as a plausible world where someone, if they had the means, could get all this equipment, and if they were in good physical condition, could put on a cowl and a cape and beat the tar out of people. So
Gotham is a little cartoonish in its portrayal of just how rotten and crime ridden it is. And one of my, again, small hangups is that Wayne. Now I understand Wayne Enterprises is a huge conglomeration that does a lot of things, but it's kind of convenient that Wayne Enterprises has all this advanced weaponry and military gear just laying around in development stage, when my understanding was that they were mainly from what I gather, I know you read extra, from what I gather from this movie, his dad was a doctor, they were a medical supply and technology company. That's a little convenient, but this movie is good enough that I'm gonna overlook these things. But
it definitely is. Wayne Enterprises or the Wayne Foundation is definitely supposed to be this large essentially like a philanthropist conglomerate where they create all kinds of things for all kinds of different fields, medical, technology, education, weaponry, or whatever they need. Honestly, I mean, they just kind of do it all.
Well, yeah, and they drop a line to hammer home the evil corporation thing, where the CEO or whatever is like, or the chairman of the board is like talking about how they can expand into selling weapons now that Bruce Wayne's dad, Thomas Wayne, has been dead for 20 years. My just thing is that, I mean, you're not usually, like in real life, you're not going to see a company that sells medical supplies like do a 180 and change its business model to sell,
or vice versa.
Weapons.
In Iron Man, in the first Iron Man, I mean, Stark Industries is mainly a weapons manufacturing company. He's like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to focus on.
Well, that's different because that's part of like he runs that company, and that was part of like his character. Like he went through an experience that made him decide he didn't want to sell weapons. This is just the Wayne Corporation say, screw it, we're going to sell weapons now. But like I said, it's kind of just a thing they brush over that I'm getting hung up on. But anyway, so anyway, they have their first encounter with Batman where he does the "I'm Batman," or no, yeah, he says that, and he strings up Falcone on a bat symbol thing.
Creates the first bat symbol.
Or whatever. And then, so we get through all that, and we see, at this point, did he have the Tumbler, the Batmobile? That's pretty cool. Now, I like the rendition of the Batmobile.
Yeah, I like the Tumbler. It's supposed to be a failed attempt at some sort of military vehicle that they were using to jump bridges. Essentially, like when bridges were out, you could like jump a river, and it would tow cables behind it, so it could create a bridge for people to get across. But apparently, they could never get the bridge to work. So it just sits in the basement of this corporation's building or whatever. Yeah. So it's whatever.
And then we get the next big action sequence where Rachel is trying to. Falcone had been put in prison.
Yeah.
And so Scarecrow, who is
Dr. Crane,
who is played by Cillian Murphy, he sprays him with that
fear toxin.
Fear toxin, because he's actually working for Ra's al Ghul, not Falcone. And anyway, he gets him moved to the asylum. So Rachel, she's still snooping around. She wants to be able to bring her own psychiatrist in to evaluate him. And so Crane decides that he's going to throw a bunch of this fear toxin in her face. After he shows her their evil plan, they're putting the fear toxin in the water supply. And Batman comes to save her. Yep. And in this sequence, it's an exciting sequence. I think it's pretty well done. I like it a lot. The one thing, I think the action is filmed pretty well in this movie. The one thing that I kind of is like, I don't know if that would happen, is he has this Sonic thing.
Oh, the thing that attracts the bats.
And I'm like, I don't really know what kind of emitter is that going to have every bat in the city really flock, and not just flock, but they literally fly through the glass windows to get to it.
Again, we're talking about a movie where a billionaire dresses up as a bat and fights crime lords.
I'm just saying, but they're also trying to make it as realistic as possible, and I'm just like, whatever. But she's gonna die because he gave her too much of a dose. So he fights through it, and he
puts her in the tumbler with Gordon's help.
And then we have this prolonged chase sequence. I think this chase sequence is entertaining for a while, but I do think it drags towards the end.
And then it gets kind of goofy at the end as he makes the jump and screams Rachel as they're going through.
Rachel. Yeah, I want to talk about, since you brought that up, Christian Bale for a moment. He's good. He definitely embodies the physicality of Batman, and he's a good actor. But at times in this movie, I think he goes a little overboard. I have a hard time taking him serious.
Sometimes, yeah.
And he holds his mouth really funky. You're like, I can't do it. But he's like, it's just like distracting the way, like, he's like puffing out his lips at all times. I don't know. It's something weird.
I don't know. I like Christian Bale. I think he's a great Batman. He's a really good Bruce Wayne for sure. He pulls off the billionaire playboy philanthropist kind of type very well, and he definitely embodies the physicality of Batman really well, which is nice.
I mean, that scene where he's...
I think the only thing that really makes him super goofy as Batman that a lot of people have, harped on over the years is the voice.
The voice.
And it's been tried to explain away by the fact that supposedly the neck of the cow, the material that it's made of, compresses his neck and causes him to have that rasp or whatever. But,
Well, I always took it as he was doing that to hide his voice.
yeah, so they tried to explain it away because, why would somebody go to that extreme to... or whatever.
That's deep, yeah. I don't know. I just, at times... like I said, for the most part, I like Christian Bale.
I like Christian Bale as Batman, despite the voice.
Sometimes,
yeah, it's definitely a little overboard.
But I do like. I kind of got off this.
It just depends on what he's saying, honestly. I mean, when he's screaming stuff like Rachel,
yeah, Rachel,
you're like,
at that point, I'm like, she's out. Why are you still using the deep voice? But whatever. But I got off this point earlier. I want to circle back to it real quick. I like the evolution, and this is helped by Christian Bale. Like I said, the League of Shadows thing, and then his first night out or whatever, where he goes to encounter Gordon, and he puts on this little ski mask or whatever, and he
goes up behind him, puts a stapler to his head,
and then when he always has that thing where his famous people mock all the time now, where he just suddenly disappears. But the first time he tries to do it, he goes out the window and he has to jump, and he has to still try to climb up the
fire escape and stuff,
and he actually falls down the fire escape.
Yeah,
and Gordon almost catches him. I like that evolution that we're showing. But anyway, back to where we were. So the car chase, they get the antidote. I did write down in my notes. I thought the antidote was kind of convenient. Lucius Fox was just like, "Oh, here it is."
You were dosed, so I took your blood and made an antidote out of it. Here you go.
Yeah,
you're like, oh, okay.
And I mean, it is just like a plot contrivance. I mean, it's a convenience. I mean, a script that doesn't have very many of them. I mean, it's just like. Literally like a one line of dialogue, and Lucius Fox just magically has the cure. But he is Morgan Freeman, so who am I to doubt Morgan Freeman?
I mean, he's played God.
He has played God
multiple times.
So
who are we to judge?
Who are we to judge? But Morgan Freeman or Lucius Fox does get fired.
He does,
because the evil board guy, evil CEO, corporate America. But anyway, so. For the big finale of this second act, one thing I do want to kind of knock this movie for is, there's always that adage that a superhero is only as good as his villain. I love Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
I think Liam Neeson is good in this movie.
Yeah.
There is not enough Liam Neeson in this movie.
He's probably in it for a 2 hour and 20-minute movie. He's in intercut scenes for the first 40 minutes, so I'd say in total in like the first act, he doesn't even show up in the second act.
That's what I'm saying.
So like combined, maybe 30 minutes of the movie.
We go.
What do you think? About 30 minutes?
Probably about 30 minutes or so. We go over an hour, probably closer to an hour 20, without even seeing him or really even they
knowing if he's alive or what.
They drop hints with this Crane character that he's
working
back.
For someone big, and his boss is coming or whatever.
Yeah, but like I said, I think Liam Neeson is good in this movie, and if you're gonna pit Christian Bale up against somebody, I know Liam Neeson has a lot of years on Christian Bale, but I mean he's a worthy adversary. Liam Neeson can do action, he can do physicality.
Absolutely, and he also embodies the I like the intelligence of Liam Neeson in combating Bruce Wayne.
Yeah. And but one of the things that makes the sequel that we're going to talk about next week or whenever we get to it.
I get 2 months from now.
One of the things that makes it so great is that
he's in
we spend a lot of time with Joker.
Yeah.
And I mean, one thing, of course, Heath Ledger puts on a magnificent performance, but we also spend a lot of time with Joker, and he's
developing his character and understanding his psyche to a degree.
Yeah, but in this movie, Ra's al Ghul is very much just a role player in this movie, where Nolan and Goyer are much more concerned with telling Batman's story. Yep. Which, I mean, I understand that. I don't want this movie to be any longer because it's long as it is, but I do wish Ra's al Ghul had more to do in this movie. I wish we could spend more time with him, and I wish he was given.
Do you think that maybe we could have just possibly cut Jonathan Crane out altogether as Scarecrow and just had it be Ra's al Ghul in certain scenes that were, maybe Ra's just brought the fear toxin. Like, why do we need? I mean, I understand, Scarecrow, the fear toxin is kind of his thing.
Yeah.
But what if we just have Ra's al Ghul being the person? Because the flower does grow in Tibet, where the League of Shadows, headquarters or whatever you want to call it was.
Yeah.
Why doesn't he just bring that to Gotham and do it himself?
Well, one thing I think Goyer, because Goyer is a huge comic book fan, I think he wanted Scarecrow in this movie.
Which Cillian Murphy's good. I love Cillian Murphy.
Cillian Murphy's a good actor, and Cillian Murphy can embody insane. Like, he just looks crazy.
It's those eyes.
I do agree with you. I think Scarecrow is really an unnecessary addition to this movie. I feel that watching this movie, I always have. I think cut him out and have it be focused on Ra's al Ghul. Because, as much as I like Cillian Murphy in this movie, he's not Liam Neeson.
No.
I love Liam Neeson.
And he never, and even throughout the entire trilogy, because he does show up in The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
He never really plays a large part. He's just kind of there.
This is the biggest role he'll play by a good shot.
By a large margin.
But Liam Neeson, like I said, I do like his performance. I do like skipping to the very end real quick, I do like when he realizes that he's dead, he doesn't panic. He just kind of closes his eyes and accepts it. See, I like that about Ra's al Ghul's character. I like that about Liam Neeson's performance. But anyway, so, they burn down Wayne Mansion. But luckily Alfred Pennyworth is there to save the day. Bruce, pull Bruce out. But then we get into this big third act where they have this microwave emitter that they stole from Wayne Enterprises that instantly vaporizes any water that is close to
or any sort of moisture, basically.
Area moisture, and they've pumped the city's water supply full of this toxin. But in order for it to have effect, it has to be breathed in through their lungs. So they have evil plan is to vaporize it and cause everybody in Gotham to go crazy and kill each other.
So their thought process in this scenario, when it starts out, this third act, we are in Arkham, and they end up releasing all the criminals and release Crane or as Scarecrow now, and they kind of run rampant, and we're down in this what they call the Narrows, which is the more crime-ridden, poor, poverty-stricken area of Gotham, and that's where they start out, with the poor people and making them turn on each other because they're the most likely to do so, is my assumption. So,
I think they start there. Well, yeah, I don't know, but anyway, that's where they start, and so they're gonna get on this subway thing. And they're going to just kind of haul it through the city. But Bruce Wayne and Gordon devise up a plan where Gordon's going to shoot out the bridge while Batman goes and fights Ra's al Ghul or whatever. Rachel is here. She saves a little boy from Scarecrow. She tases Scarecrow in the face.
And gets Gordon the antidote.
Gives Gordon the antidote. So now Gordon, Rachel, and Batman are all inoculated and they're all safe from
that. And they have one extra that they can get to Lucius so he can mass produce it,
which really never comes back into play. I guess they're gonna.
We're just all to assume that it happened,
yeah.
After this,
after the fact. But anyway, so then we have the fight on the train where a decently. I don't think it's kind of hard to see at times, but I think a decently staged fight between Ra's al Ghul and Batman. And of course, I do have questions I would think that those punches that Liam Neeson is throwing would hurt him a lot more than it would hurt Batman, who's wearing a Kevlar suit. But I'll take it. I love Liam Neeson in an action scene. And then, of course, like I said, Batman's famous line, I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you.
Yeah, but I don't have to save you.
And then he lets him die as the train crashes. Although we never see a body. Which usually means somebody's coming back, but he doesn't.
Spoiler alert. He blows up. We're to assume he blows up. The whole train blows up.
One thing I want to compliment about Christopher Nolan is, there is some CGI in this movie, but a lot of these action scenes are almost totally practical.
I think the majority of the CGI comes a lot of the effects for the fear toxin. And obviously there's going to be some CGI for the monorail and stuff like that, and some of the cityscapes that they just obviously can't create. But what CGI there is really holds up.
I would say the
fear toxin is a little questionable.
Yeah.
Especially when he douses Crane and the weird Batman thing's
that's
little sketchy looking.
I don't know if that holds up very well,
but for the most part, obviously, like I said, there's going to be some cityscapes that have been filled in with CGI.
Yeah.
They all look great. The monorail, I think, looks really good. For this movie coming out 15 years ago this
Yeah.
year, June of 2005, if I'm not, if what's what it says right here,
Yeah.
um, holds up pretty well for being 15 years old.
Yeah, it does. It does, definitely. But anyway, so then we get to the wrap up where by this point, Bruce has revealed to Rachel that he is Batman. And
In a roundabout way, he
In a
doesn't
roundabout.
go about it. She's like, you could die. At least,
tell me your name.
tell me your name.
And he repeats the line that
The line that
said
she
to him
gave him earlier, which is, it's not who you are underneath, but what you do that defines you. And
Yeah.
he says that back to her. She's like, Bruce.
What did you think about Katie Holmes in this movie?
I like Katie Holmes. I don't have a problem with her in this movie. I mean, she's not of huge importance necessarily. But I mean, she's fine.
She does. She fills the role adequately. She's not amazing or anything, but
Maggie Gyllenhaal in the next movie probably does a better part.
But I think Katie Holmes is fine. I think obviously Morgan Freeman is Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
Michael Caine is really good. I love
Michael Caine is great. Michael Caine is hands down one of the best parts of this entire trilogy.
And then Gary Oldman, for what he's asked to do, does it adequately, of course.
I've always liked him as Detective Gordon.
Yeah.
So,
but anyway, so like I said, we're at the wrap up. And Rachel, I don't really understand Rachel's reasoning at the end.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's kind of out of left field.
Yeah, where she's like, "This is your real mask," and touches his
like,
face. The man I loved is gone.
She's like, he never came back after you left, and she's like, maybe one day when Gotham no longer needs Batman, we can be together.
I mean, I thought she didn't like him when he left because he wasn't doing anything, but it doesn't really make sense. But they need to. Christopher Nolan obviously knew he was making a sequel, and he needed some strife to still be there, I guess. So
Yep.
he had that scene left in. And then at the very end of the movie, we get the hint to the villain of the next film.
Yeah, Batman goes and meets Detective Gordon, who's now a lieutenant in the police of Gotham's police department, and he's standing on top of the building where they've created the actual bat symbol with the actual emblem on the light, and he meets him, and he's like, we got some new guy, blah, 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 blah. He has a calling card, and he flips the card over, and it's a Joker card, so...
Yeah.
And then he has this whole monologue about, I never got to thank you, and Batman's like,
and
you won't ever have to. And then he jumps off the building and swooshes through as it cuts to black as his wings fly over the camera.
And the score swells. I forgot to mention, the score by Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard is really good.
Oh, it's great.
I mean, this is like not just because it's good. I mean, which it is really, really good, but this is by definition an epic movie score.
Yeah, I think this is to me, it seems like this is probably where we have gotten our blockbuster score tropes of a lot of whoa, and you're like, oh.
I mean, it probably started before this. But
Probably,
yeah.
I really, really, really enjoy the score. This is like really the entire Dark Knight trilogy score for each of the movies.
Yeah.
I think this is what's the word I'm looking for? It's probably some of the best score, if not the best scores for a superhero movie.
It's definitely up there, and a lot of it's really simple too.
Yeah.
Like the Batman thing is like 2 notes, boom, boom. But no, and I wonder. It's weird that you would see 2 such big name composers. Now I don't know how big of a name Hans Zimmer was when this came out, but
he'd done some pretty big stuff. He'd worked with Michael Bay on a couple movies, and he's a pretty big name at the time.
2 big name composers like this to collaborate on a project. I don't know who did what. If I were to guess, I would say that the kind of bassy, more
grandiose, definitely more superhero feeling. The ones that we remember more.
Yeah, were Hans Zimmer, and then the ones when the movie slows down, and like the themes that play when Rachel and Bruce are talking, and the more cinematic stuff, I think, is probably the work of James Newton Howard. But it's all good. It all works together really good, and they both should deserve a lot of praise for it. I love this score. I have most of it on my Spotify playlist. So,
absolutely.
But anyway, I think it's time for some final thoughts.
Yep.
And to decide whether this is worth the purchase, or is it worthless? Do you want me to start?
Go for it.
All right. So, this movie, I really like it. I mean, I know I've said some negative things about it, but, I really like Tim Burton's first 2 Batman films. I think they're, this movie is not independent of them totally. I mean, Tim Burton set the mood for what Batman was with his dark and brooding first film, especially, and Christopher Nolan kind of echoes that dark and brooding feel. But this is probably, when it came out, this was probably the best Batman movie made.
Yep.
I don't think it blows Tim Burton movies out of the water. Personally, I think this movie does have some issues that I've discussed, a few contrivances. I do wish the villain was stronger. I am really disappointed that Liam Neeson doesn't have a bigger role in this movie than what he does. Uh, and Christian Bale is a little overboard for me sometimes in this movie. But for the large part, I love Christopher Nolan's take on Batman. I think he did a really good job for the most part of giving a plausible explanation of why this man would dress up like a bat and fight criminals. I think I love the characters in this movie are all really fleshed out, all really good. I think there are some great themes in this movie. I think like I said, I think Christopher Nolan. Obviously, David S. Goyer, he's the story credit. I think he deserves a lot of credit, but I think Nolan. I mean, if you watch a lot of other Goyer films, they a lot of times they don't make a lot of sense, and the characters aren't that deep, and it's just kind of like throwing superhero crap at the screen for 2 hours. I think Nolan did a great job of always being like, okay, well,
he really takes the characters and the lore behind the character and grounds it.
He grounds it. That's what Nolan does. He grounds movies to the best of his ability. And I think he did a good job with this movie. I think this movie does drag a little bit. I wish it was probably about 15, 20 minutes shorter. And I do wish like maybe some of the action scenes where, especially hand-to-hand combat scenes, maybe were filmed a little more wide angle more wide angle shots and the like. But overall, this movie is really beautiful. Like you said, there's some cityscape shots, helicopter or drone. I don't know if they had drones at this point that they were shooting with, but that are really good. Effects, really good. Like I said, a lot of it's practical. I give Nolan a lot of credit for that. I really enjoy this movie. It's definitely worth the purchase. Definitely worth the purchase on Blu-ray or 4K or whatever to see it in high definition.
For the fans of the audio version of this, go ahead and give it a star rating too. If you had to, out of 5.
If I was to give it a star rating, I would give it 4 stars.
4 stars? All right.
But what about you?
I'm not really gonna, say a whole lot other than what you said. I mean, I'm really not gonna say it because you pretty much said it all. It does have some minor problems, but I think a lot of people really forget. Everyone talks about the Dark Knight when it comes to the Dark Knight trilogy. Everyone, it's almost a consensus that movie is essentially a masterpiece. It is the definitive superhero movie, grounded in reality, dark, great villain, great acting, everything all the way around. But I think a lot of people really forget how good this first movie actually is in this Dark Knight trilogy. I mean, it really sets up the tone and the feel that we carry on into the Dark Knight that people love so much. The minor problems with the movie, they don't bother me a whole lot. I mean, it does have its problems, and it's not the Dark Knight. A lot of its problems lie in the fact that there's not a super strong villain like in the Dark Knight, and Ra's al Ghul definitely could have been a lot more. And the pacing, like you said, does drag a little bit at times, and it probably could have been a little bit shorter, but the 2-hour, 20-minute runtime doesn't really bother me. I personally really love this movie. I'm definitely say it's worth the purchase. I bought the entire Dark Knight trilogy on 4K on Black Friday last year. They were $10 a piece on Best Buy, so definitely worth that purchase. And as far as a star rating goes, I'm gonna give it 4.5 stars. I've always loved this movie. I have a big love for this movie too. I've said multiple times on the audio version of this show. This is the movie that I remember really that probably gave me my love for film. My grandmother took me to go see it in 2005 when it came out. She gave me the option of going to see a Rangers game or going to see this, and I chose Batman, and so it started. But definitely a great movie, definitely a great start to a trilogy, and I got to really commend Christopher Nolan and everyone involved for creating something that is very plausible plausible within a degree, especially considering money constraints, but that could be a reality.
Yeah.
Very grounded, so.
Well, it's amazing. I said that at the time this movie was released, it was the best Batman film.
Yeah, I'd agree with that 100%.
I think arguably now though, including this is I would say probably only the third best movie now that has Bruce Wayne in it. So
I see. As far as Batman movies go, obviously The Dark Knight's going to be at the top of my list. It'd be a real toss-up whether I'd put this one at number 2 or if I'd put Batman Returns at number 2, because Batman Returns is also an
I was talking
excellent movie.
about Joker.
I'm not going to count that as a Batman movie.
You like Batman Returns that much?
Batman Returns is
With
really
the
good.
Penguin?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I like it.
I won't consider. I'm not considering Joker a Batman movie. I mean, it has Bruce Wayne in it, briefly. Briefly. I mean, if you want to count that, yeah, definitely Dark Knight, then that.
Yeah.
But if we're discounting the fact that that has a young Bruce Wayne in it for maybe 5 minutes of a 2-hour-long movie.
I was just saying movies in the Batman universe or whatever. Probably the third best now. But anyway, we're getting off track. I think that's all we had for you this week as far as this movie is concerned. As I said, we're going to be moving, or my goal is to move all of our DNA Film War stuff. From now on, we're going to be doing it as video.
Yeah. It'll definitely still be
YouTube
published.
videos.
It'll still be published as an audio file for at least the next maybe month or so.
Yeah.
Just to get people used to to it being as a video format, and we'll make sure people know that. So I'll go ahead and say, if you're listening to this in audio format, make sure that you're knowing that we are going to be transferring this over to a video format on YouTube. So under the new name of DNA Productions. So
yeah, that's right. And always got to plug our other podcast. If you enjoy listening to us, we do have another podcast called Stomp This Away, where we review a different monster movie every week, which you can check that out on all major pod hosting services.
Yeah, if you want to follow us on social media, we'll have links down below for Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So be sure you give us a like or a follow on those platforms. Be sure to tell your friends about us.
And don't forget to like and subscribe to this video.
Absolutely.
Or, well, like this video, subscribe to our channel, I guess I should say. And we'll see you next time.